This revolution is not going away.
This is the Ron Paul Liberty Report with Ron Paul, Daniel McAdams, and Chris Rossini.
We are all ambassadors of the Ron Paul Doctrine, and it's so simple. Just tell the truth.
An idea whose time has come cannot be stopped by any army or any government.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning into the Liberty Report. With us today, Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you this morning.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you this morning?
Doing well, doing well.
All right.
Let's talk about foreign policy.
All right.
Something like that.
Sounds like a plan.
And you understand better than anybody about non-intervention.
Yeah.
And when we first met, I found out that you were a non-interventionist, and I said, would you like to work and help me out? So we've been working together for a couple years now, and I hope we have improved our philosophies, but we have not improved or we have not distorted the goals that we have, and that is to move toward a position that would produce less war, more money, more freedom, and more prosperity in the United States. How can anybody deny that this is a good idea? But no, right now they're planning on $1.5 trillion, just for the military operation. So, but sometimes the little things pop up that turn out to be pretty big things. The talk about the diplomats. I used to, during the campaign, I would say, we have such and such thousands of diplomats. Why don't we use them once in a while instead of just going off and fighting wars? Well, it looks like there's an episode going on right now. They didn't have enough diplomats, people who actually understood a little bit about diplomacy. But they have two individuals that are filling the slots. There's no unemployment rate here, and they're speaking and giving us a hint on what's going on the discussion between the United States and Iran. They never talk about in the public news area in this country about, who started this war?
Yeah.
And why are oil prices up? Did we have anything to do with that? No, but the prices are up, and that's why we have to bomb Iran and take care of these problems. But anyway, the thing in the news today that we want to mention is Iran is getting annoyed.
Yeah.
Not only do they have a right to be annoyed, we travel a long way, and we complain our oil prices are going up because we're burning it all up, transporting bombs and bombing Iran. So Iran sent a message, though. There was something more than just the bombs, which are bad enough.
Yeah.
But they get annoyed by our top-notch. We just don't go along with the ordinary diplomats. We want some super diplomats, and one person is called Kushner, and the other one is Witkoff, and their resumes. I'm sure you'll have something to say about their resumes. That Kushner. I think he's in the family.
Yeah.
I think he's in the family. I think he's involved with investments. I think he's getting richer, not poorer. But those are just guesses. I'm not accusing him of anything.
Yeah.
And Witkoff, very appropriate. They don't have official titles. They're not like the Assistant Secretary of State or anything. They don't care about the titles, but their reputation and their ability. So Witkoff, what is his qualification? He understands real estate.
Yeah.
and I think that president, you would think the president's been in the real estate business, and so his friend or his henchman there, Witkoff, but the Iranians are getting annoyed.
Yeah.
They're annoyed with the bombs, but they're annoyed with them being the diplomats, and they're complaining about it, and they have a right to complain about it. What would we be doing if somebody was doing that to us, or what would we be doing if we were being bombed by somebody from, even during World War II, the closest thing of us getting bombed in an event was, of course, Pearl Harbor, but But if we were getting bombed currently now with somebody that was displeased with us, the American people would be outraged. Unfortunately, they're outraged now. It's my opinion for the wrong reasons why they're outraged, and it's their failure to be as honest they can be with themselves and with what we should be doing, what the oath of office should mean in Washington, and being honest about the problems that we face, and that we don't need $1.5 trillion in the military budget. And then they say, then we have congressmen say, oh, we don't even have to pay for it. Now, we never pay for our wars. So they have these excuses, and the people say, oh, well, that's pretty good. But but they never want to connect the big issue. The biggest issue today is the cost of living, and the people are sick and tired of it, and they're getting a hint that maybe it has something to do, with the wars that we fight. And yet, right now we're in a period of transition. People are waking up and they're getting tired of it. But right now, the Iranians are getting one more thing they can be sick and tired of, and that is the way this negotiation going. And so it's really a farce in a way to even call it negotiation. It's sort of just playing games and making fools out of a lot of other people.
Yeah, this is an explosive story that Dropsite News put out yesterday. Jeremy Scahill and Ryan Grimm. If you put up that first clip, here we go. Iran sent a message to J.D. Vance warning that Kushner and Witkoff were abusing their inside information, their inside access to negotiations. And now this addresses something that we've talked about on the show before, Dr. Paul, because this entire chapter, certainly since February 28th, when the U.S. launched its second sneak attack on Iran, that there was a pattern of these bets being made, investments being made on oil, shorting oil, long oil, this, that, and the other, that seemed to be made just before a major announcement was made by the White House. And it looked like they were being placed by someone close to the White House. And it looked like some people were making a ton of money. Now, the allegation in this article, and of course we don't know 100% whether it's true, the allegation is that those people who were making this money, making these wagers, making these investments before the news broke, were none other than Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, and Steve Witkoff, the president's real estate developer friend. Now, did they have the means? Did they have the access? Probably better than anyone else. They had the access. They knew what was going to be happening that next day. They knew if Trump was going to be bombing, whatever was going to happen, and they made those bets. This is the allegation. Now, if you go to that next clip, here's what Dropsite News uncovered during the U.S.-Iran talks in Lake Lucerne, Switzerland in late June. Iranian negotiators sent a private message to Vice President J.D. Vance through an intermediary. The Iranians warned Vance that the continued presence of President Donald Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and son-in-law Jared Kushner would undermine the chances of turning the June 17th framework into an enduring deal, according to a senior Iranian official telling Dropsite. The official spoke to Dropsite on the condition of anonymity. In the message, according to the official, Iran conveyed to Vance that the pair were more interested in exploiting insider knowledge of the negotiations to profit in financial markets than they were in reaching a deal. Iranian negotiators also expressed concern about repeated leaks from Kushner to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. A U.S. official told Axios that Kushner talks almost every day to Netanyahu and the head of Mossad. So you're right, Dr. Paul. They are annoyed. The Iranians are annoyed to the extent that they had to seek out J.D. Vance, assuming that he's a slightly more rational actor, saying, hey, something really fishy is going on, and you guys need to look into it.
You know, this is a big deal. It has a lot to do with money and people who accumulate great wealth under these conditions. It has to do with a bad foreign policy and on and on. But I want to just clarify in my mind a little bit about making money, because everybody uses that term. If you go out and work, you make some money.
Yeah.
And Anne Rand used to praise that. She loved that term, making money. But in a way, she was correct economically, speaking. So they're out there making money on it. But I want to emphasize that there's a difference between, stealing and also earning money.
Yeah.
So they're not earning money, and they're making a mockery of it all. That's what they're making it. So it's something that people realize, but they have to steal it from somebody. And also this whole operation that you described so well about how they maneuver the markets and know what the markets are. Just think of how much trouble Nancy Pelosi got because her husband knew something that he made some bucks on.
Yeah.
That was horrible. I'm glad she was caught, but that's minuscule.
Yeah, peanuts.
But to me, Daniel, this might be a very serious problem that we face. It's so flagrant now. It doesn't even seem to bother them. It's so obvious what they're doing. You would think this would be there would be, and there are the political people do complain and make the point, but you would wonder why. It's no problem for this to be out in the open. Really, it's no top secret in a lot of this thing they do. They'd like most people to just ignore it and all, but it is part of a system that just avoids any sense of morality.
Yeah.
And of course, the other thing that bothers me a lot is because I think one of the big movements in this country, something that's been around a long time, and that is the incorporation of our governments. When the corporations get big and they start buying stock, then you talk about influence. These guys didn't even have to buy stock. They just had to get in the right position, and they were the carriers of these diplomatic messages.
Yeah.
And it does make a difference. And they have to be traders, because traders in the sense that we have to trade. Oh, today the announcement is going to be ABC. So what do we do? Oh, we shorted then. But watch out, 3 o'clock, there's going to be an amendment addendum to what they said. So it's really quite criminal, in that they are practicing a thing that I call corporatism, the mixture of big business and governments, and this is international stuff going on. And people say, well, that's just corporation in a free market. No wonder people, the left can use this against the people who call themselves constitutionalists and free enterprisers. And that is not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with something quite a bit different.
And we had wondered in this whole process, and it's not just the Iran talks, but the Russia-Ukraine talks. Where's the State Department? Where are the diplomats? Because if you remember, President Trump sent Witkoff and Kushner to Russia over and over and over again. Finally, the Russians said, "Don't send them back." What are we talking about? Certainly, look at someone like Henry Kissinger, a pretty bad guy who history will probably judge very badly. But nevertheless, if it was a deal this important, you can imagine Kissinger or a Jim Baker, George Shultz getting on a plane, taking a staff of trained diplomats with them, and going for negotiations. Not sending in a couple of real estate developers, one of whom, Jared Kushner, when Netanyahu came to town, slept in his bed. Thankfully, he wasn't in it, but he went in something, Kushner had a bunk maybe on the couch or something, because Bibi's in town. That's how close they are. So sending these people instead of actual seasoned diplomats was astonishing. But now, as you point out, adding insult to injury, it turns out, if this story is true, that not only were they not qualified as diplomats, they were operating with some very sketchy behavior. Maybe that's why they weren't official employees of the government, so they could make a few bucks on the side.
it is something that you wonder why more Americans wouldn't wake up to this and see it this way, especially when there's economic problems that they're suffering from as a consequence of this foreign policy. So they don't look at this and say, "Hey, there's something wrong with this," and because they're dedicated to superficial political junk. And this, of course, is one of the reasons that, generally speaking, and especially me, I don't like the idea of thinking that, well, we have a good party and a bad party. When you think about it, their tools are different, their attitudes are different, their personalities are different, but it's all one thing: to rip off the middle class. The middle class ends up paying for it, not literally through higher prices, and also, they keep talking about renewal of the draft and this sort of thing. And so they just want to remind everybody who owns the people, and they say, well, if we need you, you're going to be drafted. So hopefully they don't get to that insane. So what the American people look at that and say, oh, who's complaining about what Trump's doing? Oh, it's the Iranian people.
Yeah.
They're monsters. Yeah. They never said a word. Never told the truth in their whole existence. Yeah. So they write it off. They don't want to hear it. It's so superficial and political and self-centered. And the bottom line is, how's this deal going to work out? What's the schedule for the next announcement, folks?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, we were both so critical during the Biden administration of Hunter Biden, seemingly corrupt. He was dealing with the Ukrainians with his oil business or whatever, doing some goofy paintings that he made more money than he should have, but almost seems like peanuts compared to this sort of thing. He seems coming off looking better every day. Well, let's revisit the article just for a couple more points. Go to the one since the Iran war began. I think that's a couple forward. Yeah, here we go. Thanks. Since the Iran war began, many financial analysts have described a pattern where speculative bets were placed or unusually large positions taken in key markets related to the conflict and diplomatic events, including consistent announcements from Trump made just prior to the Monday opening of U.S. trading. This has led to widespread public speculation that people with access to inside information are manipulating markets in oil futures, energy stocks, and prediction markets. The article continues. Now, this is the really explosive part. In June, Iran calculated the profits for such alleged manipulation had reached $9 billion. And they formally requested in writing that Iran should share the proceeds. Quote, we've conveyed through intermediaries that $4.5 billion of this sum should also be allocated to the Iranian side, the Iranian official said. The exchange text will ultimately become part of the historical record. So I don't know if they meant that as a joke or if they really wanted a little piece of the pie, but they're saying, hey, these guys made $9 billion doing all this market manipulation and betting on it. Why don't we at least get half? We're the other side of this team.
There's another word that I want to pick out, and that is calling it profits. Profits is almost, decent. You go out and you work at it, and that's the way the market works. You provide a product, and you have to make products. You have to sell them, and you make profit. Then that becomes capital, and you reinvest. And most people know about that, but they call it profit, but they should call it loot.
Yeah, loot.
How much loot did they get out of it? Oh, that means you'd be biased. But so the propagandists are just pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Of course, that's what our side is up against. But you can't say, well, give up. No, you can't overtake that. But wonder what the founding fathers ever had to put up with when they were trying to leave the British.
Yeah.
You can imagine what was in the papers there, and they were not soft-spoken when they were trying to defend what they were doing.
Well, it's always considered a real no-no if you're engaged in diplomacy for the United States to get involved financially, especially in a country that you're dealing with. Now, I remember at the end of communism, around 1990, 1991, the first U.S. ambassador sent to Hungary after communism fell, his name was Mark Palmer. He was a businessman, and he went over there. He was the ambassador, but he got kind of involved in some business deals that had to do with some television, if I'm not mistaken. It wasn't anywhere near as overt as this. He was fired. Out. You're out of here. And that was under George H.W. Bush, because it was considered so antithetical to diplomacy to get involved financially in the country that you're working with, that he was gone, and it was a huge scandal at the time. To me, if these are true, it looks like what these guys have done is orders of magnitudes worse than poor old Palmer, what he did.
You know, this is an example, and since you've had some experience with this type of operation, that they're just, just shunned. They're pushed aside, and must have a high sense of frustration about, interfering. They're really interfering with what they're supposed to be doing. And I imagine the honest diplomats, there have been a few good ones.
Yeah, sure.
There were some fascinating stories about the diplomats, both in Japan and the United States, that tried to stop that war.
Yeah.
And the diplomats were canceled out by the politicians of both countries.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the other thing is that not only were they abusing their position, apparently, if these are true, we're not making the accusation, but if these are true, they were not very good at being diplomats or envoys. Go to that next clip. Iran met for indirect diplomatic talks on February 6th in Oman and February 26th in Switzerland before the war began on February 28th. I think we need to go back one. There we go. Quote, during our negotiation rounds in Oman, it became completely clear to us that this person, Witkoff, had zero connection to diplomacy or actually advancing the talks, the official said, saying that Witkoff had entirely misrepresented Iran's positions on a range of issues, including what terms it was willing to offer the U.S. on the fate of its highly enriched uranium. Witkoff's mistaken impressions from the negotiations got passed on to Trump, he charged. And I remember when this happened, Dr. Paul, because Witkoff came back and very sarcastically ridiculed the Iranians and said that they were threatening us with nuclear weapons, when in fact the Omani representative who was there had to correct him and say, no, that really isn't what happened at all. So not only did they, if this is true, snatch $9 billion off of this process, but they may actually have led to the war itself by misrepresenting Iran's position to President Trump and thereby pushing his hand a little bit further toward the war.
If you ever have a daydream, you might think about what would it be like in our government schools that would have a course in in civics and expose how this thing works.
Yeah.
Because the rationale of teaching young people to come, and I'm sure you bumped into a few when we were in office, and that is that, the bill comes up, and then it goes to subcommittee, then it goes to committee, then it goes to, to the House, and then, all the routine. And with a pen, in seconds, they can change the whole thing, the bill and whatnot. And then also, once it is clear, because the Constitution is clear, it's just a big burden. I don't know why more people don't, on these hearings, why can't a few people just flat out ask them a simple question that they... tell what part of the Constitution are you using to do this thing? And of course, they'd hem and haw, and they would have an answer, and it would sound so sophisticated. But that is why we're strong believers in education, that people know what they're talking about and not get away with that. And we do have some in there. There's no doubt about it, but they're a minority in Congress. And but they do their best to make these points.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm going to sign out now, Dr. Paul, and right now the links aren't there, but I do want to again remind everyone that we have our conference coming up in about a month and a half, I guess it is. There's plenty of time to get those tickets, but guess what? If you get them right away, you get that early bird special and save some money, which is always good, and you're going to be spending a day with, in my opinion, and I'm biased, some of the best people on earth, some of the best people in our country. The people who go to our conferences, I think, are absolute top-notch, and they're great people to know. So everyone, if you're like me and Dr. Paul, even I'm speaking for him, sometimes we feel isolated out here. We don't know, does anyone else out there think the way we do? Well, they're there, and they will be there on September 5th in Dulles, near the airport out there in Dulles. So grab those tickets. Go to ronpaulinstitute.org, and you'll see a link on the top where you can get those tickets and apply to be a Ron Paul Scholar for 2026. Very important to do that as well. If you are an upper division undergrad or grad student, or if you know someone, encourage them to apply. We want to get a lot of good people, as Dr. Paul just mentioned, civics, the next generation. Well, we're doing our part to try to make sure that good people are coming up, and you can help us do that. So over to you, Dr. Paul.
Very good. I want to thank all our viewers today for tuning in. It's very important for us to have this message seen and heard by as many people as possible. And we thank you for participating in that, because we'll never control the media, and we don't. But we want to free the media so that if we have something to say, that somebody doesn't cancel it out. And that happens constantly, and it's a lot worse. Although I can still subtly believe and see things happening around the world. I see some problems of squelching the people who want to speak out in other countries that were supposedly, democratic. That this system of curtailing and punishing people who are speaking the truth. This is the whole problem. People need to hear the truth, and they need to understand enough to know it when they recognize the truth. And that, of course, is one of our goals, and that's one of the reasons why we have our conferences. And another reason we have the conferences is because people like to come to them. They're supposed to have a good time there and be realistic and be grateful for our ability and our authority, our ability to have these conferences. They're very important, and they have a lot of impact. So I want to thank everybody for the support you have given, because I feel so strongly that the message of liberty is one very good message and something that could seriously contribute to peace and prosperity for the whole world. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.
Thanks for watching the Ron Paul Liberty Report. Like and subscribe to help spread the message. And until next time, live free.
This country is in a rebel